I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Our sermon series for the last several months has been to review the Stephen Covey book, 7 Habits of Effective Living, and how that applies to the tenets of the Church of Illumination and the great work. Today we're going to be talking about habit number 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. The principles of empathic communication. Pascal stated, "The heart has its reasons, which reason knows not of." And in Galatians we find, "For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." I'd like to briefly review the previous habits and then we'll launch into habit number 5. Mr. Covey's habit number 1 says, "You are the creator. You are in charge." It empowers us to say to ourselves, "That's an unhealthy program I've been given from my childhood, from my social mirror. I don't like that ineffective script, and I can change." Habit number 2 is the first, or mental creation. It is based upon imagination, the ability to envision, to see the potential, to create with our minds what we cannot at present see with our eyes. It is the deep contact with our spiritual paradigm of the great work in the vision of what we can become by harmonizing our lives with divine laws. Living habit 3 is the second, or physical creation in our lives. It's the fulfillment and actualization of habits 1 and 2 in our own personal life. It's the exercise of our independent will toward becoming principle-centered. It is the day in, the day out, minute by minute, hour by hour doing it. It is living the divine law. It is the great work in action. Habit number 4 tells us to interact with our fellow human beings with a win-win paradigm. The law is always attempt to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Win-win is not a personality technique. It's a philosophy of human interaction. It is born out of the Golden Rule and is built upon the character of integrity, maturity, graciousness, and the law of plenty. It then grows out of high-trust relationships. Win-win is self-perpetuating, in that we can set the example and demonstrate to others that approaching life with a win-win paradigm gets them more of what they want. Habit 5 is the principle of seek first to understand, then to be understood. It is the key to effective communication. Communication is one of the most important skills in life. We have spent years of our life learning how to read, how to write, and how to speak. But how many hours have we spent learning how to listen? Character and communication. The first step in building the skills of effective communication is built upon the base of character that inspires openness and trust. Mr. Covey states it in this way: "We must build an emotional bank account that creates commerce between the hearts." The real key to influencing others to be understood is with your example, your conduct, your behavior. Your example flows naturally out of your character. Your character is constantly radiating and communicating. From it, others will instinctively trust or distrust you and your efforts with them. If your private performance doesn't harmonize with your public performance, it will be impossible for others to trust and open up to you. If you want to interact effectively with another person, your spouse, your child, your friend, your neighbor, your boss, your co-worker, you first need to understand them. Seek first to understand involves yet another deep paradigm shift in our consciousness, as we typically all seek first to be understood. We usually do not listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply. We are either speaking or preparing to speak. We are filtering everything through our own paradigms, projecting ourselves onto others. We are projecting our own home movies onto other people's behavior. We are so filled with our own rightness, our own autobiography, that we want to be understood. We want others to understand us. Now, Mr. Covey lists 5 levels of listening, and they are as follows. Number 1, we can totally ignore the other person who is talking. Number 2, we can pretend to listen. Number 3, we can practice selective listening, hearing only certain parts of the conversation. We can even practice number 4, attentive listening, paying much more attention and focusing on the energy of the words being said. Very few of us practice what he calls the 5th level of listening, the highest form of listening, empathic listening. Empathic listening gets inside the other person's frame of reference. You see the world from their eyes. In the earlier part of my marriage, I was so good at selective listening that my wife started making me repeat everything back to her that she was telling me to ensure that I was really listening to her. She opened my eyes to the benefits of empathic listening. The essence of empathic listening is not that you agree with someone. It's that you fully and deeply understand that person emotionally as well as intellectually. In empathic listening, you listen with your ears, but more importantly, you listen with your eyes and with your heart. Mr. Covey says that only 10% of our communication is represented by the words we say. Another 30% is represented by our tone and inflection, and 60% by our body language. In seeking to understand, you listen for feeling, for meaning. You listen for behavior. You use your right brain as well as your left brain. You sense, you intuit, you feel. Empathic listening is so powerful and useful because it gives you an accurate data to work with. Instead of projecting your own paradigm and your own assuming thoughts and feelings, motives and interpretations to the other person, you're actually listening to understand. You are focused on receiving the deep communication of another soul. Empathic listening also takes you to the next step. It provides another with psychological air and thus disarms them from battle mode. When you use empathic listening to communicate to another, you provide them with essential psychological needs: the need to be understood, the need to be affirmed, the need to be validated, the need to be appreciated. After that vital need is met, you can then focus on influencing or problem solving. The Nazarene told us this in his admonition, resist not evil. In a discussion involving conflict, disagreement, or negotiation, trying to force your view onto that of another just ends up strengthening their resolve. However, empathic listening disarms them from their conflict mode and then allows some common ground leading towards resolution. Diagnose before you prescribe. The hallmark of a good professional is their ability to accurately diagnose before they prescribe. Of course, the immediate vision we have is of the physician. However, this applies to all professionals and trades, including our interactions with others. The lawyer must first gather all the facts to truly understand the situation at hand before preparing a case. A good lawyer almost writes the opposing attorney's case before writing their own. A good engineer will understand the forces, the stresses of a structure before designing a bridge. A good teacher will assess the class before teaching. A good student will understand before they apply. A good parent will understand before evaluating or judging. The key to good judgment is understanding. By rushing into judgment first, a person will never fully understand. Seek first to understand is a correct principle evident in all areas of life, but it has its greatest power in the area of interpersonal relations and effective communication. Mr. Covey also lists what he calls 4 autobiographical responses that are inherent in most of us. Number 1 is to evaluate and judge, to rush into judgment by quickly agreeing or disagreeing. Number 2, probe. We ask questions from our own frame of reference, not the others. 3, advise. We rush to give counsel based on our own experience. And number 4, interpret. We try to figure people out, to explain their motives, their behavior, based on our own motives and behavior. We interpret others through our own mirror. These responses come automatic to our carnal selves. They are deeply scripted within us and we live around models of them all the time. But how do they affect our ability to really understand others? The obvious answer is they get in the way. If we practice listening to understand, we avoid the trap of rushing into judgment, constant nagging, probing, offering off-the-cuff self-centered advice, and interpreting another person's motives based upon our own faults and weaknesses. By paying as much attention to the way another feels about what they are saying as to what they are actually saying, you can truly understand them. Based upon your understanding, you can transmute the autobiographical scripted responses just mentioned, and then rephrase the content and reflect the feeling of the other individual back to them, demonstrating to them you are really trying to authentically understand them. By doing so, you give them psychological air. You resist not evil, and the barrier between what's going on inside them and what's actually being communicated dissipates. The other individual stops thinking and feeling one thing and communicating another. It opens soul-to-soul communication. With continued practice, a discerning, empathic listener can read what's happening down deep fast and can demonstrate such acceptance, such understanding, that other people feel safe to open up layer after layer until they get to that soft inner core where the problem really lies. Now, all of this leads to, then seek to be understood. Knowing how to be understood is the other half of Habit 5, and is equally critical in reaching win-win. However, the key to being understood is in presenting your ideas in the context of a deep understanding of the other person's paradigms and concerns. Just like the other habits, seeking first to understand is hard. It takes time. It's so much easier in the short run to hand your nearsighted glasses to another, but in the long run, you can't achieve maximum interdependent production with that strategy. Empathic listening is also risky. It takes a great deal of security and self-confidence to enter into a deep listening experience that may make you feel temporarily vulnerable. This is why habits 1, 2, and 3 are so foundational. That is why the great work is so foundational. It provides you the changeless inner core, the principle center, the growth of the soul center, from which you can handle the more outward vulnerability with strength, resolve, and peace. People want to be understood, and whatever investment of time it takes to do that will bring much greater return of time as you work from an accurate understanding of the problems and issues and from the high emotional bank account that results when a person feels deeply understood. Actually, seeking first to understand is the first step toward achieving habit number 4, the win-win. By seeking first to understand, we set the example for others to follow. We embody yet another characteristic of an initiate. We love our neighbor. As is the habit most of the times in the sermons for those who haven't been here, we try to end on a little lighter note. I have a joke. A man was talking to his daughter one day. She was a typical 4-year-old girl, cute, inquisitive, bright as a new penny. Out of the blue, she asked her dad to explain what marriage was. So Dad explained, but when the young girl appeared to be having difficulty grasping the concept, her father decided to pull out his wedding photo album, thinking perhaps visual images would help. One page after another, he pointed out the bride arriving at the church, the entrance, the wedding ceremony, and the reception. "Now do you understand?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "Is that when Mommy came home to work for us?" We all rise for the benediction, please. May the divine consciousness shine upon you and overshadow you as you leave the portals of this temple today. May the divine light within you shine ever so much brighter, becoming in deed and in truth a lamp unto your feet, and a beacon in the darkness for those who are groping for the light. Amen, amen, amen. Peace be with you. Thank you.